Hello, my name is Dr. Luke Bell. I'm lecturer in molecular horticulture at the University of Reading in the United Kingdom. This is a screencast of material originally made available for the module Principles of Horticulture and Crop Production from the years 2020 to 2025. Please note that some of the details may now be outdated.
So the learning outcomes are to name and give examples of different Brassicale species cultivated for their leaves, describe kohlrabi crop characteristics and growth requirements, give examples of different kale and mustard green leafy crops, describe the specific requirements for cultivation of watercress, and describe the cultivation practices of rocket leaves. So similar to the last screencast, I'll be kind of going through a whole diverse range of different crops. I'm going to start off with kohlrabi. So this is actually a variety of Brassica oleracea, part of the Gongolides grouping. So it's not strictly a leafy crop. It's actually grown for its enlarged stems. In this photo here you can see this kind of bulbous formation about the stem, and it's sometimes thought that it's a root crop, similar to what was covered in the last screencast, but it's actually not. It's that these stems form above the ground and are actually not root tissues at all. So it's cool season annual. It's popular in Europe, and particularly in parts of Germany and also in France. It has a similar taste to turnips, and it can come in green and purple colorations. So here's just a photo of some freshly harvested kohlrabi. It grows well in rich loamy soils with high organic matter content. Fertilizer requirements are similar to those of cauliflower. Excess nitrogen and water can cause the stems to grow quite quickly and to crack, which is kind of a problem which is found with quite a lot of different brassica varieties. Its optimum growth temperature range is between 16 and 21, but exposure to temperatures below 7 degrees C can initiate its vernalization response, and so if exposed to those temperatures it can then promote bolting and flowering. So kohlrabi can be transplanted, but it's more common for it to be direct drilled. Successive plantings can be achieved every 2 to 3 weeks and staggered so that there's continuous supply throughout a growing season. Plants are mature after about 55 to 65 days of growth, and the tops after harvest are typically trimmed off, which prolongs its shelf life storage quality, and the stems themselves should be stored at about 0 degrees C. It has a shelf life of around four weeks if treated correctly. Then we'll move on to the kind of true leafy types of Brassicales. So kale is a very popular type of non-heading Brassica oleracea, and it's part of the Aciphala group. The cultivation requirements I won't go into too much, but they are very similar to that of heading cabbage. So, as with a lot of Brassica and Brassicales cultivars and species, the cultivars are highly diverse. So you may be familiar with curly kale, which has this kind of crinkled leaf texture, which is popular for processing ingredients and use in stir fries, for example. But there's also a whole range of smooth leaf types, which are also commonly cultivated. Leaves can range in colour from anything from purple to a kind of bluish colour to greens. Maturation rate varies according to the season and environmental conditions, but typically around 40 to 50 days of growth, the crop will be ready to harvest. Kale is best grown on well-drained sandy loams. It can be transplanted or direct seeded. It has quite rapid uniform growth, and that's essential for its optimal post-harvest quality. Excessive nitrogen may reduce cold tolerance in the crop, and it may also affect that shelf life quality too. plants are hardy and can tolerate temperatures as low as -9 degrees C, so it has a similar hardiness to Brussels sprouts, for example. Next, we'll talk about Asian mustard green. So this is actually a separate species of brassica called Brassica juncea, also known as brown mustard, which is cultivated for its seeds and which are included in condiments and sauces. But they can also be harvested for their leaves, and micro leaves and baby leaves are quite popular with these types of crops. And again, there's a large and diverse range of different types included within this, and it includes things like gai choi and mizuna, which are becoming quite popular. They have similar cultivation and post-harvest requirements to that of Chinese cabbage types. Most mustard green crops are direct seeded and grown on raised beds. Leaves may only be ready after only 3 weeks of growth, so quite fast growing. Baby leaf crops are typically sown in very high densities and can be harvested multiple times. And the larger plants tend to have a higher pungency and kind of mustard flavour, but the flavour of leaves is quite variable depending on ambient environmental conditions and also soil type. Mizuna is grown in Japan quite a lot, but it's also gaining popularity in North America, and it's also available nowadays in European markets as well. It's tolerant to frosts and high temperatures, so it's quite good for growing at any time of the year. Leaves are kind of characteristic and defined by this kind of serrated and feathery kind of formation. Next, I'll move on to watercress. So its Latin name is Nasturtium officinale. It shouldn't be confused with the flower Nasturtium, which isn't actually part of the genus Nasturtium at all. So watercress requires quite specific growth conditions, although not quite so specific as we saw in the last screencast for wasabi. But it is an aquatic plant or a semi-aquatic plant, and crops need constant clean running stream water in order to be cultivated effectively. It is possible to grow watercress in soil, but it doesn't typically grow as well or achieve anywhere near the yields as it does if it's grown in water. Another quite important requirement of the leaves and the crop is that it needs a very high light intensity. So this is a photo of a watercress production, which there's actually quite a large watercress growing region in Dorset in the UK. And so the crops are grown in these shallow ponds or concrete beds. So you can see here that they have a kind of concrete structure, and these are typically about half a foot deep. The water movement is kind of facilitated by diverting nearby streams, so stream water flows through the crop constantly, and it needs that uniformity in order to grow effectively. Watercress is well suited to kind of high temperatures, so it grows well between 21 and 29 degrees C. It can be propagated from seed, but that's not very common commercially. It's more common for them to be grown from cuttings. So the crops obtain their nutrients from the flowing stream water, and the water quality is quite important for the crop and determining its health and productivity. So nitrate content must be quite high for optimal growth. But high chloride content and high pH can inhibit growth. So anything above 7.5 is quite detrimental to the productions. Crops can suffer from iron deficiencies, which can cause chlorosis of the leaves. And the crops themselves can take about 45 days to reach maturity. So within a growing season, it's possible to get in multiple harvests. So as I said, it's possible to harvest a plant quite quickly. It can be harvested by hand or by machine. So in this slide you can see it's being harvested by hand, but it's also possible for mowers to go through the concrete beds and harvest the leaves mechanically. Sometimes the stems are quite commonly left within the ponds, and then they will regrow and produce a subsequent crop, so it can be quite efficient, so that they don't have to growers don't have to plant cuttings successively, as the previous plantings will just regrow. Once harvested, the leaves should be stored at about 1 degree C, but they have quite a short shelf life of only about a week. Lastly, I'm going to talk about rocket. So rocket's actually comprised of 2 different species, which have overlapping characteristics. It's also known as rucola or arugula. So the 2 main species are Diplotaxis tenuifolia, which is known as wild rocket. That's most popular in Europe and Australasia. And then we have Aruca sativa, which is known as salad rocket, and that's more popular in parts of North and South America. So it's harvested for its quite pungent and peppery leaves, which are typically used in salads and used as a garnish in different processed food products. It's very fast growing under ideal conditions. Crops can be ready to harvest in as little as 22 days. So this is an image of my own of a rocket crop which I was growing near Rome in Italy. So rocket plants are typically grown commercially just like this. So seeds are sown in very high density, and they're harvested almost with a kind of lawnmower type machine, where the leaves are cut and packed into crates. The leaves are often cut from the same plant numerous times. So as with watercress and other Asian leafy greens, multiple harvests can come from a single planting. And in the case of rocket, the flavour of the leaves actually increases in intensity the more times that it's cut. So there's large growing regions of rocket in Italy and Spain, and there is actually a small production region in the south of the United Kingdom, but production is only really seasonal in the summer months, because of there's quite too colder temperatures the rest of the year. Salad rocket, as I mentioned, is more common in the United States and South America. It can be grown, it's quite a versatile crop, and can be grown in glass houses, polytunnels or open fields. And in this particular production that I did in Italy, this was actually in polytunnel and as part of a commercial production. So it's a warm season crop, but the plants themselves are very hardy and tolerant to environmental extremes. So they can tolerate temperatures as low as -10 and as high as about 35 degrees. So the plants themselves are essentially weeds, and so they're genetically predisposed to adapting and withstanding such harsh conditions. The high planting densities, however, are quite problematic in causing disease. So there's a lack of airflow within and between the leaves, so that can promote development of fungal diseases, and if those set in, it can write off entire crops and productions. Plants generally have quite a low nutrient requirement. However, because the plants are cut and harvested multiple times, the nutrients that they take out of the soil does need to be replaced in between the plantings. Rocket is also a high nitrate accumulating crop, so it's not really advised that additional nitrogen or too much additional nitrogen is put into the soil. So lastly, rocket leaves have a very high respiration rate, and so therefore they have quite a short shelf life. Shelf life quality of rocket leaves can be very variable, and the taste and flavour of the leaves can also be very variable depending on where it was grown. Ideal post-harvest storage temperatures should be as close to 0 degrees as possible, and sometimes processors will use modified atmosphere packaging in order to help preserve the quality in salad bags, and they can be mixed with other products as well, such as lettuce and watercress. So in summary, there are numerous diverse Brassicale species cultivated for their edible leaves and stems. Kohlrabi is an example of a stem type which forms kind of bulbous tissues, which is similar in kind of growth requirements to cabbages. Kale and mustard greens are popular and diverse leafy vegetables which are widely cultivated. Watercress has very specific aquatic growth requirements and can only be really grown in a very few regions around the world. Rocket salad species are also very popular and cultivated in most continents around the world, and it's noted for its pungent and peppery leaves.